Hey guys, hope everything's going well. Just wanted to kind of do another video here to further explain some of the things that we're trying to accomplish over the next several weeks and months with the programming. The last time I did a video, we talked a little bit about energy systems and what we're trying to do with the energy systems. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about the strength work that you're seeing and kind of why we're doing the things that we're doing it in this way, the hows and whys. There's been a number of questions that I've heard people ask, and I wanted to kind of address those so that y'all can have a little bit more understanding of what we're trying to do here. So basically what we're trying to do here is a principle-based program. There are laws, biological laws that we are applying here in the programming over the next several weeks. It's not your traditional CrossFit programming, which is a little bit random. We're specifically trying to drive a few adaptations, so we're taking a principle-based approach. So one of the biological laws that we're working on here is this principle of overload. The principle of overload is basically kind of a stress to progress type of thing. So what we did first is we found some 5 rep maxes and some 3 rep max for the deadlift, and we're just kind of see where we are. Not necessarily, we didn't want to do the 1 rep max, because 1 rep max sometimes, because the load is so great, people get into not so great positions to actually perform that lift or get that lift up. And what we didn't want to do was get into that situation where the movement quality was poor. So what we chose to do was go with 5 rep maxes and 3 rep maxes, things that are sub 1 rep max. Here you can maybe get to a weight that you could do 3 with really good form, but then all of a sudden you can't get all 5, or you can do 2 with good form, but you can't get 2, or get the third one. Whatever, we're just trying to get it to where the movement quality was high and we can kind of keep that movement going. So as we've progressed into the weeks and starting in this training, what we've done is back the weight off significantly. It's maybe still a little bit of a challenge, but it should be pretty easy right now. And one of the reasons for that is we want room to grow. Our idea is to try to, our want is for this adaptation is to push that 5 rep max further and further away from what it was, right? So if say your 5 rep max was 100, hopefully over the next several weeks, you push that to 110, maybe 115, something like that. And we do that basically by doing some things that we're trying to do here, right? One of those things is we're trying to just drive this adaptation, and driving that adaptation is meaning that we're going to be a little bit more powerful, a little bit more explosive, and have a little bit more speed, which is why we have this, the sprinting and trying to get a little bit faster. That speed work does help you learn to fire muscles quicker and to be able to be a little bit more explosive, and you'll see that carry over and transfer into lifting, especially in things like the clean, the squat, the deadlift, those types of things, because you're driving your legs and trying to get those things going, because basically a sprint is really just a moving squat, right? So we are trying to drive those specific adaptations, become more, have more speed, have more power, have more strength, right? So because we want to overload, because we want to add weight each week, that's why we backed off. We needed some room to grow. But what will happen over those weeks at those sub maximal loads, those loads that feel easy, is that we're trying to get some more intra and intermuscular coordination. Intramuscular coordination is that ability within the particular muscles, right? Certain muscles, say the quads, say the glutes, whatever. We are trying to wake up neural units, get them firing, so that instead of your muscles kind of firing in a disorganized way, they will start to fire in a organized way within the muscle. So if you think about perhaps the first time you maybe ever did a bench press, and maybe you only had the bar, and the bar at the time wasn't very, you weren't very stable with it, or you've probably seen some movements that you've done in the past where the movement isn't very good, right? So there's a lot of shaking, there's a lot of correcting course, you know, the bar's moving all over the place when you're doing a bench press. Instead of it going straight up and down, it's maybe coming around and your muscles are kind of shaking a little bit. Well, that's your neuron units in your muscles not really firing in an organized way, right? Some of them are just being woken up because you haven't maybe moved that muscle in that way for a while. So what has to happen is that muscle needs to learn how to actually fire, and fire in an organized way. So that's that intramuscular coordination that's within a particular muscle, right? So intermuscular coordination is that ability for muscle groups to fire together and work in an organized way to perform a task. So basically what that is we're kind of all going back to being a little bit of a beginner again, and working on fundamental movements. And what we might find is where we may have pushed some weight previously in the past, you know, which is fine, but maybe what we weren't doing it as well as we could have. If we go back and we kind of work on these basics, these fundamentals, then we can actually get better at these things and thus get stronger. So we're trying to work on both of these things to get that our overall goal of movement proficiency, right? So the better we move, then the better we're going to be at certain things. The exercises that we've chosen, power clean, back squat, bench press, deadlift, those things are, you know, we've got a horizontal push with the bench press. We've got a bilateral hip hinge, which is basically two legs moving at the same time. You're hinging back and flexing the knees. We have a hinge movement in the deadlift, and we have an explosive movement in the power clean. So those are all some basic primal types of movements that almost any other movement within CrossFit is just a different form of those movements. So if you can get better at these movements, you will get better at virtually every movement in CrossFit, because we are building this intra and intermuscular coordination. We're also building a pretty solid base level of strength over time. That it's maybe slow to ripe, and it'll be slow to spoil, right? Or to rot, right? So things that are quick to ripe, they quickly rot. So if you go too fast in a strength development, then you can find that that will go away relatively quickly. But if you have a pretty solid base level of strength built over a pretty solid period of time, then that's going to be slow to rot, right? Something can happen where if you, for whatever reason, are out of training for a while, you'll quickly get back in to training because you're going to have a pretty solid base level of strength, even if it's a pretty good amount of time in between, right? So that's why right now a lot of these weights probably feel pretty easy. They're meant to be, because we want this movement quality to improve. And as movement quality improves, and as you start to get under heavier loads, you're going to be in a much better position to move those loads. Plus, we're developing some explosiveness through the sprinting that's going to help you fire through some of those heavier loads as we get closer and closer. What you'll find, and everybody will be a little bit different, as we add weight each week, some people are going to reach a point that they can't get all 3 sets of 5 at the next weight, that 5 pounds or 2.5 pounds or whatever it is. And if you can't, that's cool. That's actually where we kind of want to get to. It's a bit of a failure point, and that failure is actually a great place to be, because what we're going to do at that point is we will step back a certain amount of weight so we can start to build back up again. And then what we'll add into that is some compensatory acceleration, which I'll talk about in another video later. But so a couple of whys, right? So one of the reasons why we're going so lighter in the weight is so that we can build this movement proficiency, get this intra and intermuscular coordination, and so we can drive the adaptations we're trying to drive. Why only one set of deadlifts? Well, one set of deadlifts is one of those things where people can pick up a lot of weight off the ground, but if we get too much volume at a certain point, especially at heavier weights, then that movement quality can start to go down. That back position doesn't look so great. So what we're trying to do is get one good heavy set, because something I did not write down on here that we're trying to do, and this is why you're seeing lots of dead bugs, and we're seeing lots of planks, and we're seeing lots of things like that. Some of the bodybuilding movements that we're putting in is we're trying to build some tensile strength, right? Tensile strength in the trunk, tensile strength in the limbs, tensile strength in the upper back, so that you can hold these heavier loads and keep better positions throughout. So that tensile strength is super important. This is why it's not great to check out of things like the dead bugs and stuff like that, because you really want to. Dead bug position is basically your back position in almost any lift, right? So don't check out in those things. Understand what they're there for, and build that tensile strength so that you can be a much more resilient person when it comes to carrying loads. And as we've seen with things like Harvey and stuff like that, there's times when we might need that effort, right? That tensile strength to be able to carry loved ones, get our possessions out, our valuable possessions out of our house in a time of a disaster situation. So just a little bit more whys of what we're doing here. So hopefully this helps explain why we're doing some of this stuff, and hopefully it'll help you kind of focus a little bit over the next several weeks to see what we're trying to accomplish here. So, all right, have fun training.